Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's informational session. My name is Mike Pino, and I have the distinct honor and pleasure to introduce our speaker on the topic of persuasion and influence to drive change. Paul Fisher, an associate fellow at Oxford Said Business School, is renowned for his expertise in negotiation, persuasion, and leadership. As the program director of the Oxford Program on Negotiation and the program director of the Oxford Senior Executive Leadership Program, he has significantly impacted executive education by designing and teaching modules on negotiation, decision-making, persuasion, emotional regulation, and stakeholder management. His work extends beyond Oxford, contributing to leadership programs for global organizations like the UN World Food Program and the Bank of Jamaica, bringing amazing simulations on negotiation and cross-cultural communication to us all to sharpen our application of skills, and developing impact and value through meaningful connection. Without further ado, I'd like to invite Paul to share some thoughts about the role of persuasion and influence to drive change. Paul?
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mike. And lovely to see you all. Welcome. As Mike said, my name is Paul Fisher, Associate Fellow at Said Business School, and the Program Director of the Oxford Senior Executive Leadership Program, which is a really terrific program which is designed to equip senior leaders with the skills and the mindset to lead in today's complex world. We had a brilliant first iteration of the program last year, and we're really, really excited to welcoming our second cohort for this program next February, and more on that in a minute. But what I'm going to do really in the next 20 minutes is tell you a little bit about how you can drive change through persuasion and influence. And of course, many of you face very significant challenges around change, whether it be introducing AI within your organizations or within your services to customers, whether it be realigning the future of work, whether it be reacting to shifting markets and ever-changing global challenges. Change is with all of us, and how we manage it and how we drive it through is a real theme of our program, and something I want to talk to you a little bit about today. But let me start by asking you, and it would be great to get your feedback as well, as to what you consider to be the kind of main obstacles to change in your organization. So perhaps you could tell me, and perhaps feel free to use the chat or take your microphone off. Give me a short statement about what the typical negative reaction to change is. So, for example, I can start with one. I like things the way they are. People are naturally inclined to stick to familiar routines and behaviors. So, can anyone else kind of think of other potential means of change and resistance statements to change? I've got a few, but it would be great to get your thoughts as well. What are the kind of main resistances to change?
And I'm looking here in the webinar chat. I'll
Oh,
pass some things along as I see
oh,
them come in.
fantastic. That would be great. Thank you, Mike. I've got lots of
Um,
ideas, but it'd be good to get your perspectives as well.
so one that just popped in right now is that people don't like to see things. Trying to make sense of this. I'm sorry, I misread two things together. People are trying to make sense of how things are changing and what how this is going to change what they need to do. They don't like to change. They
Yeah,
don't want to change. These are types of things that people are dealing with. They're resistant because they're afraid that they'll lose their power.
yeah,
Is
yeah.
another thing that popped up. So
Great. No,
these are
thank
some
you,
of the
Mike.
things that popped in.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thank you very much, Mike. So yeah, resistance, losing power, losing authority. Things are just fine the way they are. What incentivizes me to change? What helps me? Let me give you a few other suggestions. Why fix something if it isn't broken? We're doing fine at the moment. We're still making profits. We're acquiring new customers. Why do we need to change? Why is no one else supporting you on this? People don't like to go it alone. People don't like to put themselves out there if they don't think they've got the support with them. What's in it for me? Why should I take risks for this project? What are the incentives? And one of the really, really common ones is I just don't understand what the goal is here. This lack of a clear vision. If the purpose and goals of the change are not clearly communicated, people may feel uncertain or even fearful about what's coming in the future. And I think it's important when we look at change to understand and diagnose the obstacles to change, because it's only by really figuring out those obstacles that we can actually put in place effective strategies to overcome this. And you'll see this if you come on the senior executive leadership program. It's important to give the problem sufficient time and space rather than immediately jumping to solutions. So now, looking at some of these obstacles, what I want to do is introduce, just for each one of these, one persuasion or influence tool that can actually help you address this resistance. Now, of course, it doesn't give you the complete answer, but it's something to consider when you're faced with these all too familiar resistance statements, so to speak. And I'm going to, by drawing on a couple of tools, I'm going to actually draw on two persuasion and influence experts who have probably contributed more to the field of persuasion and influence than anyone else. And one of them is Professor Robert Cialdini, a behavioral psychologist at Arizona State University. He wrote a brilliant book called Influence, the Psychology of Persuasion. And the other one is someone who actually lived 2,500 years before Cialdini, Aristotle, born in northern Greece, lived to the age of 62, and he contributed a huge amount to the science of influence and persuasion. And what he talked about in his book, The Rhetoric, 2,500 years ago, is every bit as applicable today. So let me demonstrate some of these principles that both Cialdini and Aristotle brought to the fore. So I like things the way they are. So this resistance statement, this idea that people are naturally inclined to stick to familiar routines and behaviors. So how can you address that? This idea of sticking to the status quo. Well, one principle that Cialdini talks about is what we call the consistency principle. And what the consistency principle means is that we have a desire to be consistent with our words, beliefs, and attitudes. We don't like to change our mind. And the longer we stick to a principle, the more we are embedded to it. So when it comes to change, if you can connect the proposed change to the individual's prior beliefs, their values, their commitments, their statements, it actually becomes harder for them to resist without them actually feeling inconsistent. So to give you an example, when it comes to change, you might want to frame change as a natural progression of their values and goals. This change aligns with the focus on innovation that you've always been a champion of, or highlight past commitments, for example, remind them of their previous support for related initiatives. You've always been one of the biggest advocates of embracing new ways of working, and this is essentially what we're doing here. And the last thing I'd say about consistency is sometimes it's important to start small. Change is an incremental process sometimes. Everyone thinks of change, many people think of change as this transformative process which takes place overnight, but sometimes it takes small incremental steps. So if you can secure agreement on small steps towards the change, then you're actually on the way. You need to take people with you. And it's also important to add, actually, regarding the consistency principle, if you can get people to write down or commit in front of other people to the change, it's much harder for them to actually back down and reverse their support. Just to give you an example from Cialdini in a completely different area, one of the big challenges in the UK is missed health appointments, missed doctor appointments. And one simple thing ensured an increase of 18% of patients actually going to doctor's appointments. And what they were asked to do was to write down the appointment details on a card themselves rather than getting the assistant, the secretary to write down their next appointment. So by writing it down themselves, they were much more likely to attend. So consistency is a really, really powerful principle. My second one I talked about, resistance statement, is why fix it if it isn't broken? As I said, if people don't feel like they've got a clear rationale for change, it's everything's worked so far, they're not going to come along to and buy into this idea of change. So this is another of Cialdini's principles. It's called the scarcity principle. Now, essentially, the scarcity principle is about we see things as more valuable when they are less available, when there's less opportunities for them. And you'll see this the whole time in marketing. Anyone who's been to booking.com, I don't know if you're reserving a hotel and it tells you 5 people are looking at this very room right now, or in high demand, only 4 rooms left. Is that really the case? Well, not always. It's often giving you that sense of competition where you actually have to make that booking now. And the scarcity principle helps create a sense of urgency. It highlights the potential risks of inaction, even if at the moment things seem to be going fine. So think about this with your change when you're communicating change. If we wait too long, we risk falling behind our competition. We need to make the change now. Scarcity emphasizes that people are motivated to act when they perceive they might lose an opportunity or advantages. Another one also emphasize missed opportunities. By not making the changes now, we are going to miss out on all these new opportunities in emerging markets. And it's really, really powerful, this scarcity principle. And it also links into what we call loss aversion, where we actually feel the negative effects of a loss twice as much as the positive effects of a gain. So that is scarcity. My third one out of the 5 resistance statements: why is no one else supporting you on this? And this links into another principle called social proof. What does social proof mean? Well, let me give you an example. There was a hotel who was trying to encourage people to reuse their towels and their bedroom linen. So they used 2 options. The first one, they said to the guests, they gave them all the reasons why it benefits the environment to reuse towels, to reuse linen. And the second time, they said, rather than talking about the benefits, they just simply said 75% of other guests reuse their towels at some time during their stay. Which one do you think was more effective? Well, the second one was. In the first one, 23% complied. In the second one, over 60%. And this is social proof in action. We look to other people for guidance to determine what is correct and how to act. We tend to be social animals, and you'll see social proof in marketing the whole time. The fastest growing organization, the best selling book, it shows that other people are buying it, so you should as well. So what can the impact of social proof be on instigating change? Well, you might like to provide examples of others who support the change. Other companies have already adopted this approach with great results, and we are already seeing the same within our internal teams as well. Or showcase credible sources. Both Deloitte and Gartner recommend this is the way to go. If you look at their report on AI, they're providing these recommendations, and people feel much more comfortable if they can look to other people who have forged that path as well. And the penultimate goal, my penultimate resistance statement was, what's in it for me? Uh, what's in it? What are the incentives? Why should I put myself out there to take such a risk when actually it would be easier for me to keep my head under the parapet? And this is another of Cialdini's principles, and it's called reciprocity. And reciprocity is essentially the obligation of a return favor. So we are more likely to say yes to someone that we feel like we owe something to. It's a very, very powerful psychological tool. It actually transcends cultures. If I ask Mike for dinner, I hope Mike will invite me in return. If I buy Siobhan, my colleague at Oxford, a drink, I hope Siobhan will buy me a drink. It's really, really powerful. People are more likely to say yes to someone they owe something to. And a very famous example from Cialdini was tips at a restaurant. So 2 groups of people at a restaurant, one was given a mint with their bill, and the size of the tip went up 5%. They were given 2 mints with their bill, and the size of their tips compared to the people who didn't get mints at all went up to over 15%. So it's that idea of obligation. So when it comes to change, reciprocity taps into that human tendency to want to give something back when you feel you've received something valuable. So frame the benefits personally. You'll have more access to tools to make your work more powerful. You'll get a lot of visibility at board level in pushing this through. So you're providing something and making your counterpart, making your team feel good, and in return they'll support you as well. And the final obstacle, the resistance statement in this whistle stop tour of persuasion and influence, is I just don't understand what the vision is. And for the answer to this, I'm going to go to Aristotle. Aristotle, as I said, was born 2,500 years before Cialdini, but his work on persuasion absolutely resonates today. He was actually a student of Plato. Plato said focus on the message, but Aristotle actually said it's much more than just logic and 50 slide PowerPoint presentations. And so when it comes to I don't understand what the vision is, I'd like to introduce the KISS principle. Now, the KISS principle, it stands as a rude version, keep it simple, stupid, or a more polite version, keep it short and simple. And essentially, the KISS principle is asking yourself, what is the one thing my audience, my team, my employers will remember 1 week from now in terms of getting across a message? So it's all about clarity and simplicity to ensure that your vision is communicated in a way that is firstly understandable, it's relatable, and it's actionable. A clear and compelling vision. If you can put together a clear and compelling vision, you can take people with you. So think about this is our vision. This is where we want to go. What this means for you is break it into relatable outcomes. And finally, give a clear rationale. We're doing this because. And the more you can share concrete examples or stories that illustrates that vision in action, the better in terms of promoting and promulgating change. And when it comes to the simplicity, it's really important to focus on just a few messages, ideally just three. This is a really interesting piece of research which shows you the number of messages and the recall. So if you have 1 to 2 messages, people tend to remember it. If you have 3 messages, there's still a pretty high recall. If you have more than 4, it completely drops off a cliff. And it's not a case where you remember, if you have 7 messages, you remember the first 3, you forget all of them. But it's really, really difficult. It's not easy to be briefed. We're trained, and I should know, working in a university, we're trained to convey information. From when we were young as children at school, it was all about putting as much information on the page, 100-slide PowerPoint presentations, and really complex issues don't lend themselves easily to really simple statements. And that's one of the challenges. So what I'd encourage you to do, and it's really difficult to do, is try and compress your ideas into a simple narrative that you can explain to someone in just 60 seconds. It is really, really difficult to do. It's much harder to give less information than more information, but I really encourage you to keep it short and simple. Clarity and simplicity is so powerful. And you look at some of the great change makers in history, and it was all about a very clear, simple message. I remember Steve Jobs at Apple, simplicity, all about beautiful inside and out. And one model which I really like, which I'm going to leave you with, which I think links in very well to the senior executive leadership program, was actually developed by a labor union organizer in the US in the 1960s and 70s called Marshall Gantz. And basically, he was trying to get farm workers organized into unions. And he put together a very simple narrative structure to help promote change and encourage collective bargaining power. And essentially, what he did was he talked about the self. So everything starts with your own personal story, what you bring to the conversation. And then you expand it to us. So you try and bring everyone together around a particular problem. And then now the story of now. And essentially that is a sense of urgency. We've got to move on this today. So the story of self, what I'm bringing personally to this story, the story of us, what it means to you all as well, and the story of now. It connects personal motivation, collective purpose, and the urgency for action. So let me give you an example. When I first joined this company, I was struck by how much we care about doing the right thing, not just for our business, but for our communities and the environment. I grew up seeing, when I grew up, I saw how pollution affected my hometown. And I've always believed that organizations have a responsibility not just to drive profits, but to create a better future. So that's the self. And as a company, we've built a reputation on being leaders in innovation and social responsibility. Together, we've already reduced our carbon emissions by 40% in the last 5 years. It's about living up to the values we all share. So that's we together, the us. But the stakes are higher than ever. New regulations are coming in, competitors are making bold moves in sustainability. If we act now, we can stay ahead of the curve and continue to lead the industry. This isn't just the right thing to do, it's essential for our success and future. So I think that's a really nice way of focusing on you personally, your individual story, and then, of course, the story of us, and then the story of now. And this kind of brings us back to our senior executive leadership program. And I think that our program, the journey we take you on, very much mirrors the story of person of me, us, and now. So in our program, we empower you to transform challenges into opportunities, not only shaping your leadership capabilities, but also equipping you with the tools to foster flexibility, adaptability, and visionary thinking in the face of and constant change and challenges. And we focus, of course, on you. Every great leader needs to look initially at themselves. How can I become an effective leader while still being my authentic self? How can I build up resilience within my organization? And how can I transfer those skills to other people? And then the organization. Leadership is a contact sport and will inevitably come up against the needs and culture of the organization, the complex sets of relationships, and often diverse and conflicting stakeholders. How can I collaborate? How can I develop sustainable partnerships? How can I promote and foster a culture of innovation? And then the final one is context. What is how am I relating to the complex situational global context in an increasingly interconnected world? How can you as a leader meet the needs of external stakeholders? And our unique offering at Oxford really blends the best of Oxford's prestigious campus experience with an industry immersion in Dubai. Many of you, of course, know Dubai, a vibrant city, and then, of course, live online sessions by a number of renowned industry experts and Oxford faculty. And these are just some of the things we cover in the program. So the self, we look at your leadership journey. We talk to leadership practitioners. We start the program talking to an amazing leader called Baroness Ashton, who ran the European Union's foreign policy for 5 years, dealing with everything from the Iran nuclear deal to Ukraine to managing European Union's foreign policy. We look at how you build social capital, how you develop your leadership brand, how you coaching in leadership, and how you can understand yourself. When you come to Oxford, we'll be shining the spotlight on you with a number of psychometric tools. And then the organization, adaptive leadership, creating resilience, collaborative strategies, negotiation, of course, my main area of expertise, persuasion, which we've touched on today, leadership as a performing art, whether it be through Shakespeare or through conducting a choir in Oxford University Chapel. And then, of course, the context, AI and ethics, marketing in the digital age, make better decisions as we look outwardly, innovation, leadership in a volatile world. So all these areas kind of link together in what I think is a really, really fabulous program. So I'm going to stop there. I hope that was helpful in just giving you a little bit of an insight into, well, firstly into persuasion, only in 20 minutes, but just a few practical tools, but also this brilliant program, the Senior Executive Leadership Program. So very happy to take any questions, Mike. I don't know if you're going to field any questions. Anyone who like any details specifically from me, very happy to link up on LinkedIn. This is my email address. But Mike, over to you.
Thank you so much, Paul. And really just to sort of reinforce two of the things that you shared there, the start date for this upcoming program is going to be February 4th, and it is a global cohort. We'll be attracting people from the eastern side of the United States and North America all the way to Japan. And part of the real powerful experience is not just the cohort that you're a part of, but joining the alumni network. And the Oxford Business Alumni Network is very powerful at 27,000 sharp. Now we have three questions that were asked, and I have about four more that were queued up. So we're probably not going to have enough time to cover all of them, Paul. I'm going to start in terms of how they were actually asked. The three that were asked actually as people were signing in. The first one came from George. And the question is, how can leaders communicate complex ideas and strategic initiatives clearly and persuasively to a wide range of audiences, from team members to board members?
Great. Well, I will try and keep the answer. I will try and take heed of Aristotle and keep my answers as simple as possible using the KISS principle. But I'd say in terms of how leaders communicate complex ideas, strategic initiatives, know your audience, understand their needs and priorities, and tailor your message accordingly. Craft a clear and core message, but simplify it. Simplify complexity. Use things like storytelling to create impact. Be transparent, acknowledge complexity, be upfront about the challenges while at the same time presenting solutions, and show commitment as well. I think it's so important for us to not only talk the talk as leaders, but walk the walk. So convey your passion and belief in the initiative.
Perfect. The second question that we got came from Abdallah. And the question is, how does the program equip participants with practical tools and techniques that can be immediately applied to real-world leadership challenges?
Thank you. Great question, Adela. I think a really unique aspect of this program is that we combine theory. Of course, we look at the latest theory. We have brilliant academics, but we also make sure that it's absolutely rooted in real life leadership challenges. So it's a very practical program. And what we tend to do is we create lots of space for discussions and insights between the cohort. We ask you to come to the program just thinking about a particular leadership challenge you're currently facing, and we look to apply the learnings to what you're taught in the classroom and online. And I also think one of the real unique selling points of these programs is the diversity of the cohort. So you will learn a lot from us, but you will also learn a huge amount from each other. And it's amazing, a sense of empowerment when you can meet people who are facing similar problems, because leadership can be quite a lonely role at times. And just sharing insights, experiences, and we will be looking at cohorts. From our last cohort was multiple nationalities, everything from small startups in the musical publishing industry to huge big blue chip global companies like Unilever. So we can all learn from the arts to manufacturing to ballet to some amazing leaders bringing their different perspectives. So and I think the last thing I'd say, I'm trying to keep it simple, is we have a really strong learning arc as well. So my job as a program director is to tell you where you are and where you're going to be, and we make sure that is very clear as you go through your learning journey.
The third question that we received is from Simon. And the question is, how can senior leaders effectively navigate complex organizational structures, particularly in multinational corporations, and you mentioned Unilever just before, to drive change and influence decisions?
Again, a great question, Simon. That kind of question, you could spend 2 days talking about that, but I'll give you three key things. Understand the organizational landscape. And by that, I mean map your stakeholders, your structures, your formal and your informal hierarchies. Where are the power centers? Where are the key decision makers? So really understand that organizational landscape, and also be prepared to adapt as well. One the focus of the program is scenario planning, for example. It's a really unique program at Oxford. We have the best experts in the world on scenario planning, so we look to the future as well. How do you have a scenario plan in place? Can you adapt? Can you map future challenges coming up over the horizon? Develop a clear vision and strategy. And then the final thing I'd say is just leverage networks and relationships. So important. And we really focus on that in the program, how you can develop collaborative strategies. So build coalitions, form alliances, foster trust, build credibility, and then communicate effectively. And if you can do that, you can drive collaboration across silos within your organization as well. So we really encourage this focus on working together, cross-functional teams, encouraging diverse teams to work together, and fostering innovation.
We received about 7 more, and I've answered 6 of them, and there are 6 still open, so I'm still ripping through them. From Claude, we received the question, how can we deal with people who cannot tolerate uncertainty when they face any changes?
Wow. I mean, again, that's a big question. I think that the question you need to ask is why? Why are they struggling so much? I talked earlier about some of the resistors to change. Maybe it's fear of the unknown, fear of the status quo. How we can we work with them to create this feeling of psychological safety? And one of the sessions we'll be doing is focusing on innovation. How do you create an innovative culture within your organization? And Baroness Ashton also talks about that as well. This idea that it's okay to embrace failure sometimes. You learn just as much from failure as you do from success. And Yeah, so there's lots of different areas we tend to focus on in regard to that. But again, brilliant question.
Well, we have actually run to the end of time, unfortunately. We will answer the rest of these questions and we'll send out answers. We'll also send out the slides and the recording. Actually, just we'll send out the recording and the materials. We thank you very much. Thank you so much, Paul. It's been my pleasure to actually be with you here today. And thank you everyone for attending.
Thank you so much, Mike. Pleasure to meet you all, and I hope to see many of you in person, either in Oxford or online next year. But it's a great program, and do feel to reach out if you have any other questions for me. Great to see you all.